Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back with a Hong Kong content review, continuing on the Lau Kar-leung series and continuing on with his amazing filmography and diving into all of his films. It's a really fun little kind of series of kind of videos I'm doing, and it's very longevity. There's still quite a lot of movies to get through. Hopefully I can check out all of them. And continuing on with the Shaw Brothers Vol.2 box set this time around. I love how most of his films are split between 88 film editions and the Volume 1 and Volume 2 box set. Most of his films are divided between those, apart from one or two exceptions. And this time it is Mad Monkey Kung Fu, which is on the edition here, released in 1979. This is starring Lau Kar-leung himself as the main protagonist character, which is interesting because in last one he was the supporting character as the master, and this one he is basically the main star of the film essentially. And this is quite a different one compared to Shadowboxing and even the film before that. He's definitely diving more into his comedy roots, going into the 80s now almost, very close to that, and just kind of exploring his talents in different areas and kind of showcasing different sides of martial arts and kind of different kind of techniques, and developing his stories and characters like he usually does. And this one is quite a different one compared to the ones I've seen previously. So let's dive into Mad Monkey Kung Fu.
Mad Monkey Kung Fu. An action picture you cannot afford to miss.
Mad Monkey Kung Fu, released in 1979 as mentioned, and is starring Lau Kar-leung alongside directing it also. And this time around it's quite a different type of movie. It's a 2-hour film. This is a lot more leading into the comedy side. If you thought Shadowboxing or maybe some of his previous films prior to this were comedies, this is going full on slapstick, kind of very silly, kind of goofy kind of humor compared to some of the more kind of stealth humor, I would say, stealth martial arts, or kind of inquisitive type of humor compared to like Dirty Ho, for instance, which is definitely more my vibe. This film, storyline-wise, it basically follows Lau Kar-leung's character. He is a peaking opera performer alongside with his sister, and you've got our main bad guys, which are quite different compared to the typical ones you usually see in these Hong Kong movies. They are following kind of these kind of peaking opera performances from place to place, and basically our main bad guy, which is the Parmei Lau, basically kind of fancies this woman, essentially the sister character, and kind of has a kind of a scheme and a ploy with his wife, which is interesting, into his house, into his home, give him hospitality, give him wine and drink. And basically Lau Kar-leung's character is an expert in Mad Monkey kind of Kung Fu, essentially. I'm guessing that's what this idea is. This kind of like almost drunken style kind of fighting, but more applied to a monkey style kind of, attitude and mannerisms kind of thing. And his Kung Fu is very strong, it's very disciplined. He demonstrates that within this very unique kind of first act of the film, essentially, where Lau's character is getting him drunk, essentially, making him look like a fool and trying to challenge him at the same time. And that's where you're going to get some of the cool kind of slick kind of humor, because even though he's drunk, even though he's making a fool of himself, he's still very good. He can still kind of combat those kind of hits and those kind of strikes. And even though Lau's character is really kind of going for it and really trying to make a mockery of him, it's kind of looking bad on him ultimately by the end. And he's getting pissed off, he's getting a bit annoyed, and obviously he wants the sister, but he needs him to kind of be indisposed, essentially, the brother character. And he keeps on giving him wine, keeps giving him more drink, and that's just kind of giving him more kind of fuel and energy to kind of, mouth off, essentially. And every time the main bad guy kind of puts a stroke on him, there's a bit of a laugh off, like a bit of a joke, saying, oh, your Kung Fu is good, but you need more discipline, your firm needs to be stronger, your stance needs to be stronger. And you get quite a good introduction first act of the film. You get the ideas of who the bad guys are, who our main protagonist characters are, and things go really rotten very quickly with this kind of false accusation with the brother character, Lau's character, and basically pretend something to happen with the wife early up to the film. And essentially he gets his hand kind of battened and kind of almost broken to submission, essentially, as a punishment, basically for this act that's happened, and also to kind of stop him from basically coming back later on and acting out revenge or finding out the truth that could happen. And the sister character offers herself in service, dedicated a whole life service to him, and basically, his scheme, his plan is one, essentially. He got the sister and he's got the brother character, and he can no longer come back for revenge because his hands are broken. And we cut to a bit of a time, fast forward, his character, Longboy's character, is a street performer. He's got a monkey, literally, and he's doing these kind of like certain skill sets. So this is a really fun little film for him, being the fact he's directing and starring this one, and he's really demonstrating these really awesome fighting style skill sets. And you've got this, I'd say, sort of apprentice admirer character also in town, who is also is called Monkey for some reason. He's known as Monkey, which is kind of maybe convenient for the film, I guess. And he kind of, admires Longboy's character and wants to learn the ropes and learns all the teachings he has to offer. And a good chunk of the film, I would say, most of the film, this is a 2-hour movie, is very silly kind of hijinks and silly kind of gimmicky stuff. Some of it's funny, some of it's amusing. I don't mind a lot of it. It just comes a bit too much after a while, and that's the biggest problem with the film. Ultimately, I think it is not as good as it could have been potentially. I think this could have been an hour and a half movie, maybe an hour and 40 tops. I think the storyline could have been a lot tighter, especially how some of the reveals and some of the things that do happen within the third act do happen. I think this threaded storyline of what happens with the sister is quite intriguing, and I think it could have gone the extra mile. Essentially, the idea is of, she is still in service to him, our main bad guys, and the wife basically wants to put her in a brothel, essentially, and put her out to work, essentially. And that could have been a much interesting kind of reveal and a much more interesting kind of darker path. Like, what has she been doing during that time, knowing that her brother's out there and kind of can never come back, essentially, and she's having to live in service to him, for the debt that never happened, this act that never happened, to evade kind of justice, essentially. I think you could have pushed the extra mile, and this is interesting because he did Mantis not too long ago after this, before this film, and I'm surprised he didn't go for that. Obviously, this is meant to be more of a light-hearted, sillier kind of comedy, and most of the film is that, with our apprentice character, Monkey, mouthing off and doing these silly hijinks and, demonstrating his kind of skill sets and acting out like a monkey, literally. And, he's kind of taunting and messing around with these kind of debt collectors that are coming into town, taking kind of wealth and money. And, he's kind of stealing some of it back, and he's just basically kind of standing up for the little people, essentially, and there's a lot of training sequences. However, this film takes it to another level. This is a lot of training sequences, a lot of downtime of just fighting, pretending to fight, and it comes a little too much. And unfortunately, these issues are a detriment to the film and detriment to the enjoyment ultimately of what the film's trying to go for. While I did enjoy my time with it, I definitely was looking at my phone a bit more, definitely was looking at the time, thinking, oh wow, we still got another half an hour, another 40 minutes, kind of thing. When you're looking at your phone, you're kind of getting a little bit disconnected to what's happening because nothing's really happening. It's just the same kind of rinse and repeat a little bit. It becomes a little bit frustrating. And while I do think the film is pretty good and really fun, and I definitely think it has some brilliant action fight sequences in the film, especially towards the first act and especially the third act of the film, where it gets really kind of like up and close and personal, and these fights are really kind of hitting hard. It's the kind of the bulk of the film, and ultimately where the story goes, where it's a little bit lacking ultimately. Unfortunately, I think the sister storyline angle, I think, could have been darker. I think it could have been more interesting. I think it could have been a lot more high stakes. And I think you could have really pushed some of the interesting kind of like how mean, how nasty this bad guy is, especially the wife as well. You could have done something quite special there, and I think it would have been a nice contrast compared to the silly kind of goofy kind of comedy, which is fine. However, you do need an compelling kind of storyline. You do need something to kind of be in the background to go, oh, that's building up, or Lau Kar-leung is going to know about this later on. Oh my God, this is going to explode, essentially. So you can have the fun kind of master and apprentice kind of angle of the storyline, but you could have homed in a little bit more, make it a little bit tighter, shorten it down by at least 20 to maybe 30 minutes, get some of those kind of silly kind of moments. Granted, have fun with them, enjoy them, but also home in on the storyline a bit more, make it a bit more personal, because they do this in the film with Lau Kar-leung having kind of nightmares, and he would never drink again, and he's definitely scarred from this experience, and under this kind of false lie, essentially. And even when the sister character in the film finds out the truth, it just kind of happens to be accidental. She just happens to overhear it, which is really kind of poor ultimately. I think that could have been something interesting there, maybe between the wife and her, and maybe because she's got the skill set as well, she could fight. maybe there could have been something interesting there. I just think there's some missed opportunity in the storyline while still maintaining what the film ultimately is. And it's been my thoughts and opinions. I'd love to know your guys. Please comment down below. In the meantime, guys, Amphlett Reviews, signing out.